Good evening, folks. It's Diamond with the Oppenheimer Ranch Project, Magnetic Reversal News, Sacred Geography, and Shinrin Yoku, bringing you a grand solar minimum update Friday, August 25th, around 9 p.m. Mountain Time, 2023. Greece wildfires caused by climate change. Well, 79 people have been arrested for arson. And we're looking at the tropical Atlantic. Invest 93 is headed to the Gulf Coast of Florida in just about 4 or 5 days. Hawaii officials released a list, condensed, thankfully, of 388 still missing from the Maui fires. Keep calm. It's boom time. 7 tornadoes confirmed as Michigan storms down trees and power lines. 5 people killed. At least 5 killed in severe storms in Michigan confirmed, as deadly severe weather spawned at least 10 confirmed tornadoes.
To the Midwest are cleaning up tonight after violent, deadly storms ripped through the region with a tornado outbreak now confirmed. Maggie Vespa has late details.
Mayhem across the Midwest after a sweeping round of deadly storms barreled through southern Michigan and northwest Ohio overnight.
Look at it, it's flipped right over.
The system packing 10 confirmed tornadoes, one with wind speeds up to 125 miles per hour. Huge trees ripped up by their roots.
This is the most intense storm I've ever witnessed in my life.
In Lansing, one person died when this tree fell through a house. Another person was killed, several more injured after dozens of cars wrecked on I-96. And near Grand Rapids, 3 more deaths, including 2 children, after authorities say this car hydroplaned. The storms at their peak, knocking out power for more than 500,000 between the 2 states.
We heard crash and boom and glass breaking.
Near Lansing, a farm destroyed. Residents evacuated from a nursing home.
The roof was ripped off the building and they had people trapped inside.
The storms follow Thursday's torrential flash floods. In Michigan, a state of emergency. Officials noting in one county, hundreds of homeowners have reported damage.
We pull together. We're a community. We know how to support each other, and we're here for each other.
Another round of recovery underway as America's summer of severe weather continues. Maggie Vespa, NBC News.
Wow, so bad news for the Midwest here. And what we know now is that 10 tornadoes have struck the Midwest in just the last 24 hours. 7 of those touching down in Michigan as part of severe storms powered by strong winds, where there are at least now 5 dead. Downing trees, tearing roofs off buildings, leaving hundreds of thousands, in fact, 500,000 without power. We'll get to the number in just a moment here. But the National Weather Service on Friday said an EF2 tornado with maximum winds of 125 miles per hour struck Lansing, Michigan, the state capital, killing 1 person Thursday night and injuring 3 others. The Weather Service also confirmed an EF1 tornado with winds of 90 miles per hour crossed from Ingham County into the western edge of adjacent Livingston County on Thursday night. So that is, unfortunately, their plight. Now we have this severe storms are still moving through the region as I speak. Severe storms move through Louisville, thousands without power there. Here is the power outage map. Now Michigan is the hardest hit here, currently 338,000. Let's refresh this. All right, the numbers are going down a little. 321,000 in Michigan, 104,000 in Ohio, 42,000 in Kentucky, 10,000 in Pennsylvania, and just a few thousand in Tennessee. That total number is still at 500,000. And the storms are still going to be affecting the Northeast for the next at least 3 hours as that system moves offshore. I don't see any pop-up storms here until Sunday, or anything significant until we see a tropical storm moving up into the region. And another system, which we'll talk about in just a minute, may be headed to Florida and the Gulf Coast. That is the current track on the GFS model, which will make landfall noontime Wednesday, August 30th. So heed the warnings here. The models are early, but we'll show you some of those spaghetti models coming up in just a moment. A steamy weekend ahead for many. The relentless and dangerous heat will continue across the southern U.S. this weekend. The heat will also return to the desert southwest and the northwest. It's been quite cool and rainy here. I have nothing to complain about. Meanwhile, the National Hurricane Center continues to monitor a tropical disturbance in the northwestern Caribbean Sea, and a tropical depression is likely to form late this weekend or early next week over the eastern Gulf of Mexico and move north towards the Panhandle. Full forecast in just a moment, as Hawaii officials released the list of 388 people missing from the Maui fires. Now, this is both good news as well as bad news. The good news is that the list had over 1,000 people missing, and it's now whittled down to 388. But if this is the actual number of people that perished, that were vaporized, and there are no human remains left, then over 500 people have died in the Maui fires, in one of the most deadly fires in over 100 years. Now, the list names people that are still unaccounted for. Thankfully, a huge swath has been removed, but officials in Lahaina are asking anyone on the list who survived to come forward so that they can lower that number, and for good measure. Our prayers and our thoughts go out to Lahaina and Hawaii and all the suffering happening on the island. As the tropical season continues, we've got disturbance, 3-0 chance of cyclone formation, 2, just a meager chance. Franklin is making its way up. I'm going to rafe the coast, be well offshore of Halifax, and move out here to the North Sea in just about a week. Disturbance 1 is the one that we are looking at, which could potentially have some issues here. And there is the current tracks, which are updated to this moment. So now they're tightening in here on the region of the Gulf Coast from Tallahassee south towards Tampa Bay. So in this hole is where this baby is going to go. Now, as it makes its way across the Gulf of Mexico, which is extremely warm in late August, this baby could intensify quite significantly. So let's take a look at some of the models to get a grip on what may be coming. Well, here over at Windy, the GFS model is showing it as a tropical storm with winds just approaching 60 miles per hour. We'll play that through Tuesday into Wednesday morning, making landfall here on northern Florida there and the Panhandle. So that is the GFS model. We'll just move this back a little bit, and we'll change it over to the European, which is showing a little more easterly track. So if you don't know what I mean by that, let's take a look at this. We'll run the European model. There's another tropical system moving up and away there, which we just discussed. But in the European model, could be more significant. It's getting up to 68 miles per hour. Now, it's still a tropical storm, just a little more easterly, making landfall between Tampa and Tallahassee, just like the model suggests. Now, it's rafing the coast here and could re-intensify off Savannah. On the European models, it's showing a re-intensification here off the coast, which could be torrential rainfall and bad news from Georgia, South Carolina, North Carolina. This is Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday through the 1st of September. And then we have a major hurricane forming here. So let's just pause this and let's look at the winds here. No, that is just a center of circulation. Just a tropical storm with really good form, maybe 60 mile per hour winds. These are all models, remember, folks. Let's see what the GFS is showing this laid out. Yeah, the GFS shows nothing developing off the coast. A tropical storm hitting and then dissipating. So the models are completely not in accordance, so stay tuned. In about 24 to 48 hours, we're going to know much more about these tropical systems and be able to give you a way better heads up. But from Tallahassee to Tampa Bay, something is coming and no one's bumming. So be prepared. Now, Greece, wildfires, 79 people arrested for arson. This is not climate change, no matter how the media spins it, and they're not going to re-spin it when the facts come out here. We're here at the BBC News. Just 19 hours ago, the Greece wildfires, almost 80 people have been arrested for arson. There's your climate change. Seismic update. No quakes of note. We're keeping a close eye on Hawaii, Italy, and many other places on the globe because of the uptick at Campi Flegrei. And let's talk about some killer eruptions, including killer lakes. Do you know what a limnic eruption is? It may be the world's rarest natural disasters. 2 lakes erupted in Cameroon in the 1980s. The unexpected explosions introduced scientists to a new kind of natural disaster. And it is when volcanic lakes like this one are constantly receiving CO2 from the volcano, and these lakes are stratified and they start to store all the CO2 at depth. These lakes have to be very deep and stratified. And catastrophically, they can release the CO2 like the fizz when you crack a soda can that you shook. Very similar. The only problem is CO2 is very heavy and it will pool in the valley here and it will suffocate all animals and humans that live there. And in fact, this has happened recently and many times before. All these links will be below to get you up to speed on degassing the killer lakes Nyos, Monon, and Cameroon. And so what they've done is they've put pipes down at depth, allowing for that CO2 to outgas in a very continuous and low-level fashion that it actually doesn't kill anyone in the valley. Now, this is probably one of the biggest sources of CO2 outgassing on the planet, eclipsing everything that humans do right here in one spout. Worldwide volcano news update. Reventador Ubines puffing to 23,000 feet. We've got Santa Huito, Popo, Kilauea, Mayon, and yours as well as Nevado de Ruiz. Shishaldin getting active, 28,000 foot strong eruption moments ago. Popo to 21,000. Mayon earlier today, volcanic ash emitted 23,000 at Sabancaya. Here it was Shishaldin earlier today, just a small volcanic glow and low-level eruptive activity, but then followed by a big boom just moments ago. Significant eruption to 28,000 feet. So we want to bring you up to speed on that. Santa Huito eruptions continue and blocks detach from the caldera. And Kilauea, increased swarm continues. Shut up, Al. Get in your hole. Space weather news update. Look at the drop down in the activity in the sun all the way down to the B4 range. This is the lowest we've seen in weeks, if not months. The sun is literally shutting down, even though there are large sunspots on the face during solar max. Those people that predicted the most active sunspot ever are completely lost in the sauce, and there are no follow-ups or caveats to their predictions. So, the sun is dead at solar max, and there is not a single source that has an explanation for it but us. I wonder what, and Zarkova. What say you? Leave a comment below. More climate nonsense. Loss of sea ice causes catastrophic breeding failure for emperor penguins. Regardless of the good or bad forecasts from predictors, the 3-day geomagnetic forecast at Solar Max is all quiet on the Western Front. KP2 for the most part, so be safe. Now, more propaganda. We talked about the loss of sea ice causing catastrophic breeding failures for emperor penguins. Now, first they attacked polar bears. The polar bear narrative is still brainwashed into over 50% of the population that watches social media and mainstream news. They think polar bear populations are decreasing due to climate change. The truth is that can't be further from the truth. Polar bear populations have been increasing for decades since the beginning of the polar bear scare. Polar bear populations are at the highest they have ever been, as well as emperor penguins. And in this fear-mongering non-expose, it's more of a sharticle coming out yesterday, they're saying that 9% of an emperor penguin colony died. And it was due to catastrophic ice failure And they have some video here to show you these penguins are amazing and how the ice, watch what happens here. There's the colony. They're moving around and the ice disappears. And you know what they have the audacity to claim in the article? That the emperor penguins drowned because the ice disappeared. Did they get the memo that emperor penguins can hold their breath for almost an hour, I think? And they are the most prolific swimmers of any mammal on Earth? I guess they didn't. But the fact is that the longevity of penguins in general is very poor. Winter starvation may claim the lives of up to 50% of certain penguin chicks in any clutch. So a loss of 9% is not even significant based on the data I just showed you. Emperor penguin chicks alone may experience a 90% mortality within the first year of their lives because of all extenuating circumstances. So if you're visualizing a 9% die-off in a clutch, that is 10 times less than what is potentially available. 90% mortality within the first year of life. So these scientists are clearly not scientists. They're printing and sharing with you propaganda, not news, and we want to bring it forward and so that you're all informed on what's actually going on. The most important thing is that there has been news coming out over the last 3 weeks that large swaths of Antarctica are ice-free, also causing problems for penguins. This is the southern hemisphere ice extent using satellite data as of 48 hours ago, and you can see there is in some areas, there are 1,000 miles of ice extending off the coast of Antarctica. The thinnest area might have a 100-mile ice sheet, but the entire continent is covered with thousands, millions of square miles of ice. There are no large swaths of ice-free Antarctica, even though the mainstream media continues to publish articles claiming that Antarctica is burning up and is at all-time lows. And we've only been keeping records on Antarctica for less than 50 years. So any of these claims should be suspect at best. Now here's more nonsense headlines. Could common medicines make heat waves more dangerous? Do you see how they worded that? If you read the article, what they say is if you keep your medicines in the sun, there actually makes them less effective and you may die, which has nothing to do with where people keep their medicine, which is in the medicine cabinet in their house, which is typically in a wall, set into the wall, and is much cooler than the entire house, and probably has, anyway, you see how they get you. Frauds. Now, a lot of people have been contacting me because of fearmongers like Ben Davidson and other schmucktards on the internet that are telling everyone that the Earth's going to shift in 5 seconds and we're all going to die and a wave will what? No, that's not what happens. We are in a magnetic excursion. It began here in 1700 as the magnetic field began to shift from a high point to a low point. You're either moving one way in the magnetic field on Earth or the other way. And we happen to be reducing in magnetic field strength. And we've increased multiple times since the Carrington event here where an acceleration occurred. And we're now in the next magnetic excursion of our geologic history. No, it doesn't mean the crust is going to slip or the sun is going to explode and everyone's going to die. That's not what it means. You can watch all of our 3,400 podcasts and get up to speed on what actually happens, or you can do your own research. Any normal, moderately intelligent human can Google what happens during a magnetic excursion. Is crustal slip real? Things like that. You don't have to dump into a wormhole. You can get real facts. And you can cross-check your references. Yes, there are magnetic reversals, but they are quite infrequent. In fact, the last one was 780,000 years ago. We don't expect any of these excursions to cause a reversal at all for any reason. But if one does occur, it's not the end of the world either. It just means that the magnetic field poles flip on Earth. They flip on the sun every 22 years. It's called a Hale cycle, and nothing catastrophic typically happens. But what it does do is it drives the climate on Earth every 22 years in a cycle. Just like the 11-year solar cycle, the 22-year Hale cycle, the Bond cycle, and many other cycles. There is a nested hierarchy of cycles in climate, and none of them have to do with the trace gas of 0.04% called CO2, where over 80% of which is controlled by the ocean and not humans. That is just dumb. Now, rarely seen zodiacal light observed from atop Mount Washington.
The Mount Washington Observatory is sharing a really rare and super cool sight in the sky.
Take a look at this. It is called the Zodiacal Light. Never heard about this before, but that is sunlight reflecting off of space dust. That's what they say. It happens twice a year if the planets are aligned just right and there aren't too many clouds. And you can see the effects just before and just after sunrise. Zodiacal light. I've never even heard of this.
I know, and we see a lot of different things
Yeah.
here.
It is just not something we see often. It's usually, you know, spring, fall, maybe a day here or a day there, so it isn't something that we talk about a lot. And there aren't perfect explanations as to where exactly that space dust is coming from, which makes it a little bit more odd and even more of a treat when you get a chance to.
Wow, that's totally interesting. Zodiacal light observed from atop of Mount Washington is a biennial or biannual occurrence. And it's not unique. It's not because of the dust that's now accumulating on the sun that the micronova will occur on. So please, get your panties out of a bunch and take a breath. Learn how to meditate. Be present. And stop projecting into Nonsenseville. Speaking of Nonsenseville, the feds are suing Elon Musk's SpaceX for allegedly not hiring illegal aliens, refugees, and asylees. The world has become dystopian thanks to Sleepy Joe, where they're now suing the most important corporations that they claim to want to support, right? The green movement and getting to Mars and anyway. But why would you sue a corporation for not hiring illegal aliens and refugees? That is insane. If I owned a company, you know who I'd hire? The best candidate. Period. You can learn about how to prioritize your life at the 34th annual Crestone Energy Fair, where we don't care about the color of your skin. We care about the quality of your demeanor. What do you have to bring to the table? What can you bring to support the new civilization that we're all moving into? Reimagine it. Self, village, nature. If you want to survive and thrive in a future that's dystopian, well, certainly the people at the 34th annual Crestone Energy Fair are not part of any, let's say, 15-minute city. They're not going to plug in to the ether. They're certainly not going to get the chip. We like to poop in a bag and grow our own food and be sovereign. Learn more. Saturday, I'll be doing a panel speaker discussion on bringing back the soil to life. How to build a Johnson-Su reactor. What it means for the future of composting and your farm or your garden. And on Sunday, Leah and I will be discussing reclaim your sovereignty. How to become more self-sufficient. Well, we've had 8, now almost approaching a decade of experience on how to do that. So join us as we share our successes and failures with you at the talk. That's the 34th annual Crestone Energy Fair, September 16th and 17th, 2023. We need volunteers. So please go to the website and be a hero. And that's a boom to knowledge. Please share this video as we are shadow banned and we need your help to grow. Become a Patreon. Support the work we do. We love you. Be safe. And that is a boom. Gremlin is recovering amazingly. It's almost like nothing happened.